Hello, everyone. Happy Friday.
Hello,
Hey, Ace, how you doing?
I'm
How's it?
good, Rizel. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. I feel like it's been a long week. I feel like it's been a long January, but I'm trucking through.
I know,
um,
right? January doesn't want to end.
Oh, and just for people, if this is your first time tuning in, this is basically a weekly stream that we do where we explore self-sovereign identity, and particularly other concepts related to Web 5, such
Mhm.
as like verifiable credentials and global payments like TB Dex, and just being able to own your own data. Today, we have a self sovereign identity expert from Trinsic named Zack Jones. I'm going to bring him up on the stage. Super excited. Hey, Zach, how you doing?
Doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
That's really good. I'm excited to have you. I feel like I don't know. I think I told you this already, but for real, like when I talk look at stuff in TBD, they're like, "Oh my gosh, Trinsic posted a blog post. Oh my god!" Like we really
Yeah,
we love your so there's a lot of synergy here, and I think we're really excited to have you come and chat with us. So, do you want to just quickly
Cool.
tell us a little bit about yourself? Like just anything fun, and like how did you even get into this space in general?
Yeah, I think everybody has a interesting story to get into like the identity space or the decentralized identity space. I was actually when I graduated from college, I was running like an education nonprofit for 5 years. So I was like working with high school students, like young people, college students, like doing mentorship and kind of like and helping to get their own projects off the ground. So kind of like getting their ideas flowing and like building up like confidence and things like that. So I always really liked kind of entrepreneurship and like innovation and kind of helping people get their ideas off the ground. And after I was kind of like moved on from the nonprofit space, I was kind of exploring Web3 and like technology because we actually ran into all these problems running a nonprofit related to identity because
hmm
we were trying to basically like we were paying the students as like a work opportunity in order to like go through this innovation program, but you can't actually pay them until you onboard them and like verify their driver's license and go through all this like paperwork, and that would actually cause like some pretty significant like drop off in like the amount of students who would like complete the process. And also like getting mentors to help out. Like you'd think it's really easy. You just ask somebody to come mentor, but you got to get them background check and like verify all these different things.
hmm
So there were all these like identity problems that we faced. So I was thinking like there's probably better ways to do this with technology because we would literally like drive an hour to go get fingerprinted, to go get a background check, just so we could have somebody like mentor and like work with students. So I was exploring different like technology solutions and ideas and ended up kind of like spending some time in the Web3 world and like just learning about like blockchain and NFTs and thinking like, oh, could this solve some of the problems around like identity and stuff like that? And the answer was actually like, no, not really. Until I kind of found out about like verifiable credentials and like decentralized identifiers, like wallets and things like that. So it turns out that like you probably don't want everything to become an NFT or like a token, but if you have like sensitive data or private data that you need to be like like very high like assurance and be able to use like prove it for different things, verifiable credentials are actually this like really cool technology that I'd never heard about. And that kind of got me my mind spinning about like, wow, this has so many use cases that could make people's lives like better and easier, give people
hmm
access. Like that's kind of the mission, is like to make it easier to access the things that we all need. And like that's what we were doing in the nonprofit world. And like that's an extension of what we're doing really with like credentials and better forms of like digital identity.
That is awesome. I have a question before I get into that. I just want to say hello to everyone in chat. I think we skipped that part a little bit. So if you're watching, you can say hello to us. We definitely respond. We're always excited to speak and chat with everyone in the audience. Which also leads me to the next question I was going to ask you, right? Because we have a diverse set of people watching us like every week, different levels of expertise. And I'm curious in relation to, because you had experience with like the non-profit, right? And then you tried the
Mhm.
Web3 space, NFTs, and the likes. In relation to these other technologies or these other attempts at addressing verification, addressing identity as quickly as possible. What was your first impression of VCs? Because not everyone understands VCs or how they can apply to the real world, like right from the bat, right? So in that position where you were seeing it for the first time and you had, you
Mhm.
faced some of these difficulties in the past and you were looking for a solution for it, what were like your first impressions for verifiable credentials in that regard?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. So I think there was kind of one cool thing about like the NFT space that kind of helped me like to understand. So a lot of my like understanding for verifiable credentials came from kind of thinking about like what an NFT was and like how they were similar or different. So one of like the cool interactions with the NFTs that I would see is that like if you own a specific token, you could verify that and join like a Discord server, for example, for like members of that. So that's
Mhm.
kind of how I started to understand like, okay, a VC is kind of like that, but you don't need it to be publicly known that you own that token based on your blockchain address. Because once people know your blockchain address, and you have all of your NFTs and all of your other cryptocurrencies, people can kind of see all of that. And I was thinking like, that's maybe not great because I didn't really think about that when I first got started. And now people, if once they find that address, they can look at my whole transaction history. But the whole idea of like having it proven on a blockchain or having it cryptographically signed that like you own something, like that all is really cool and makes so much sense that we just have this like this address and we can sign a
Mhm.
message and that allows us to access something. So it was kind of that like initial like primitive of like, okay, I'm going to prove that I own this thing with like a signature, and that will give me access to this other thing. But it was like it doesn't need to be like a picture of a cartoon animal, right? It could be other things,
Right.
like a diploma or something like that. So that was like the initial like spark, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you brought up NFTs, and I know one other difference that Angie has told me about because I've never really dealt with NFTs that much, but that like they're not NFTs are transferable, but like verifiable credentials aren't. I have a quick
Mhm.
question. It's kind of unrelated, but you said you were like a nonprofit, like entrepreneur, director, and then you went into tech. Did you
Mhm.
already, was your nonprofit a tech nonprofit, or did you already have like studied tech? Like I'm confused, not confused, but curious on like
Me too. Yeah.
on like the like, this is really cool if maybe you're not someone with like a very strong technical background and you can easily
Mhm.
pick up like these types of concepts, or maybe you already had that. I'm just like trying to fill in the blanks.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I was always kind of interested in technology, but like you said, I kind of joined like education nonprofit. It was not we didn't the most like technological thing we did was like we had a website and we like taught kids like, oh, here's how to make a no code website or something like that. So we were doing like some tech adjacent things, but
Mhm.
that wasn't really our core competency. Like we weren't teaching kids how to code or anything. It was just like, hey, you have a cool project, maybe you should also make a website for it, or here's how to use Canva. So we were kind of using some
Right.
tech tools to like improve the organization, like the student projects. But I definitely like made kind of like that a non-traditional jump into technology in the sense that like I was, as you're like looking at jobs, looking at opportunities, there's a lot of like, product design, product development, and like software engineering, things like that, which was not my background.
Mhm.
But I realized that like actually from like the marketing angle is something that I had a lot more experience with. So like content and like storytelling was really like the thing that I was most experienced with in terms of like joining a company. So really when I was looking to join, I was looking to like write blog posts, like create content, like do things in the area to like help people understand technical concepts because I really
Mhm.
liked like trying to explain something complicated or like simplify like a technical topic. That was kind of my skill set. And I kind of had done a few other things that were like related to that. And I'd done some like technical content writing for like Alchemy, which is like a blockchain like node provider. So there were a few other things that I'd done just like kind of briefly that were kind of bridging like non-technical and like technical with like content, like easy to understand, like writing basically. So
Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. And I also like the reason I asked too is like I really like hearing about like non-traditional like journeys into tech, and like I had one too. So I was like, wait, there's like a missing link here, but that makes a lot of sense. All right.
Yeah. A quick hello to, sorry to interrupt. Angie. Hello, Angie. Thank you for joining us. Angie's in chat. Hello, Noble, and everyone else on LinkedIn, Twitter, and the likes. Yeah. So I'm very curious about Trinsic, and before we get into what Trinsic is, like, how did you get to Trinsic? Like, what was the, if we've gotten a picture of how you transition into, VCs, into, the entire identity space. So how did you get Trinsic, and what are you doing there right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was kind of looking to work in technology, but also work on like a problem or like an area that would make the world better. So not all companies like check that box, right? So certain things, if it's just like that, I don't really know if this is going to make the world much better if we like sell more advertising or something like that. So that kind of narrowed down my search a little bit. But in terms of like once I started to understand, as I was, searching for jobs and kind of talking to different companies and people, like understanding like the mission of Trinsic to like make the world more accessible, understanding how like verifiable credentials are kind of this like enabling technology that's becoming more like widespread. That was kind of what got me interested. And then it was really just like I started to meet the team and like talk with them and kind of just go through the interview process, and was like, oh, this is a really cool opportunity to join. Like Trinsic raised a seed round in early 2022. So then this was kind of like middle of 2022. They were kind of hiring some more people after the fundraise. And that was kind of when I joined. So joined to kind of help on the marketing team and to help with kind of our story and messaging and content and things like that. So that's primarily, but we're a small team, so I do marketing, but I'm also like doing a lot of like customer calls and like customer success and like working with different, entrepreneurs and developers and things like that. So my role is, it's like says just director of marketing, but it's a startup, it's a small company, you wear
Yeah.
so many different hats. So I kind of do a little bit of everything.
That
Yeah,
makes
when you
sense.
told me it was 10 people or approximately 10 people, I'm really impressed at the
Yeah.
the success y'all have made. Quickly before, or maybe even part of the introduction to what Trinsic is, I think maybe we should talk about like what exactly verifiable credentials are, or how you would describe them, because I think we started talking about it, but I know
Yeah.
it's like a really new concept for a lot of people. So yeah,
Mhm.
I can
Yeah.
if you want.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I'll just kind of show this. Um, yeah, I think you can all see the slide. So
Yeah.
basically, a verifiable credential is like a cryptographically signed like message or attestation. So on the screen, there's like a little bit of a sample, but it's basically just it's a JSON blob. So there's a bunch of different kind of fields in this. And some of the fields in here are related to like actual data about you, like your name and your address, your date of birth. And then some of them are related to like the verifiable nature of it. So there's kind of a signature at the bottom. There's some information about who issued the credential. So all these kind of things we'll get into like a more practical example where we can kind of like show an example of what a credential is. But the main idea essentially is that somebody is signing a message. You can think about a university diploma, for example. So think about like a credential as like your graduation certificate from a university. And your university is giving you that graduation certificate, and they're signing it with like their private keys essentially, which means that in the future even if that university like shuts down in the future, somebody could go back in and verify that it was actually issued by that university. So that's kind of the like, it's cryptographically verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
There's another benefit is they're tamper proof. So say you got your diploma and you graduated with like a marketing degree, but then you wanted to pretend that you actually got like a engineering degree. If you did that and you tried to like change one of the fields within the credential, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody tried to verify it in the future, it would fail because the signature at the bottom of the credential is actually like, derived from the contents of it. So you can't switch it up. You can't change it. So once it's been issued to you, it would become clear if you tried to change something on it. Um, and then there's just a few other kind of factors is that these are private by design, like they're meant to be issued to a person and kind of held and then shared as like a proof essentially. So it's not like something that you would transfer between people. It's not like something that you would
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like share with everyone, because then they could potentially like try to use it for themselves, right? And there are W3C standards that kind of dictate like verifiable credential formats and like how the data is structured. So, um, these things can become like interoperable between different ecosystems and issuers and things like that.
That is cool. I think a short way, might not be short at the end of the day, but a short way I like to describe
Yeah.
this is that a verifiable credential is essentially a secure way to prove a claim for an individual, organization, or literally anything. And it's a way for us to present this going forward. Of course, that's not going to like how it is done. Is it like, signed cryptographically or whatever the case is, but just for people to visualize like, hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying I'm making a claim. How can I prove this, in the future and past proof way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But yeah, let's get into what Trinsic is. I'm kind of excited.
Me too.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think one interesting example or like need for this is that
Mhm.
sometimes a university or even a company, when they shut down, they no longer exist, and people need to verify that somebody worked there. There's like no way to do it. So people, once our nonprofit ended up like merging and we kind of like closed our entity and like merged with another, but people would call and say like, hey, did this person work for your company? And I'd be like, yes. And they'd be like, great, what's your address? I'm like, well, we don't have one anymore. And they'd be like, well, how can we prove that they worked there? And I was like, well, they worked there 2 years ago, but we no longer like exist formally anymore. So if you had a credential that was signed
Yeah,
and issued by us 2 years ago, you'd always be able to prove that forever into the future,
Oh my
basically. So
gosh, I
exactly.
like
yeah.
that. I like that as an example because even when I I was joining TBD and they were doing my background check, there's a startup on my resume that like doesn't
Hmm.
exist. There's no one to call. So it was like
Yep.
taking time in the background check, and I was like, I wish I didn't add it. But yeah, that's
Yep.
like a good example. Love
Yeah.
that.
Before we get right
Yeah.
into it, sorry, Zach, we have a nice question from LinkedIn, which is
Yep.
asking how are these credentials held is in a wallet or in a smart contract account? And also mention that, how are these basically controlled by the user? Um,
Yep.
wondering if you want to take that.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, okay, so there's a lot of different ways that different like companies and platforms approach this. So, one slight difference between verifiable credentials and like token ownership or like NFT ownership is that the data needs to kind of live off chain at some level. So, people could either store it in essentially cloud storage or on like device or edge storage, right? And then like maybe there's another way of kind of like decentralized storage, like decentralized web nodes, right, from TBD. So there's kind of some choices that you make in terms of where you're going to store the data of the credential, because you don't want it to be publicly available on chain in the same way that you could see all the addresses that own a given token. and then all, in the token world, all you need to do is kind of sign a message from your wallet address to prove ownership of it and transfer it or something like that. So for this, there are kind of, cloud-based wallets or cloud-based architecture, and then there's kind of an edge-based wallet where you can hold the data in the credential on your device. Obviously, there are trade-offs in both directions, right? So in having the credential on your device, you have benefits in terms of like privacy, where it's not stored in the cloud, but you also have some drawbacks in terms of usability, where you might need to download a separate application and set up a seed phrase or something in order to get onboarded. Um, and but then in the cloud case, it's like maybe easier to get onboarded, but then you do have the trade-off of like cloud storage. So what is starting to happen in the same way that like one of the wallet trends that we see generally in like Web3 is like embedded wallets from companies like Privy and Magic Link and others. You have some kind of middle roads to do this. So yeah.
That makes sense. I think Ace disappeared. I don't know where he went, but oh wait, he sent us a chat. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for addressing those questions.
Mhm.
I think let's jump into what Trinsic is and
Yeah.
show it off as well. And then as we get more questions, we can do another Q&A afterwards.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So what we'll do to kind of start to showcase this is we'll jump into the Trinsic dashboard. So Trinsic initially started as like kind of like the easiest way to issue a verifiable credential.
Oh,
And so we kind of built like a developer platform where you can start to issue verifiable credentials. So that's kind of what I'll showcase is like the evolution a little bit of like our current version of the platform.
okay.
Um, so the way that it works is that we think about the platform in terms of like ecosystems, and anybody can sign up on the dashboard and create their own kind of like testing ecosystem. So there are
Oh,
randomly generated names like this one. And as you can see, I have a bunch of different ecosystems in here with randomly generated names. Um,
they're
we
like
could create a
sandbox.
fresh one.
Are they
Yeah,
like?
exactly. They're just little sandbox
Oh, I
ecosystems.
think you
Yeah.
need to zoom in just a bit. People are saying they can't see it that clearly, and I know it's kind of
Oh,
yeah. You could probably see it really well, but sometimes on like StreamYard, you have to zoom into a point that you think it looks goofy.
okay. Does that look a little bit better?
It looks fine for me, but let me see what it looks like in Discord. But you can keep going. I
Okay.
will. StreamYard, you have to
Yeah.
zoom into
Okay.
a point that you think it looks
Okay.
goofy.
Okay, cool. Um, okay. So we'll just start and kind of in like the home. So you have this ecosystem. If you do want to issue a verifiable credential, you first need to define like what that credential template is. So everything kind of in the credential land is dictated by the credential template. So I have a few predefined templates here that are like a student identification or a teacher identification. Um, and what we can do is we can just look at these briefly and kind of understand like what is in here. So this is a little bit more
This
technical,
is
but kind of
cool.
showing, yeah, you can kind of see all the different kind of information that can be contained in the credential. Um, and basically you have some kind of metadata around like when it was issued, when it expires, the credential status, things like that. So credentials can be revoked. So if you're thinking about, a diploma or like a work credential, if you no longer work at the company, your work credential gets revoked. So that's another like slight distinction maybe with uh, like tokens or NFTs or something is like you you can't really get them revoked. Like once you have them in your wallet, you have them in your wallet. So this can be used to dictate like an employment credential that allows you to access a building, which, if you leave the company, then you shouldn't be able to do that anymore. Um, So anyways, and then we can see some of the actual like fields contained here, like first name and like what type of, what type of data that is. First name, last name, the course, and the semester. So this is a very simple like credential template. And yeah, but for the sake of this, we'll kind of go through the process of like creating a new one. And I think we'll just call this like a verified ID credential. So it's like a demo of a verified user. And a lot of the things, like one of the use cases that we're seeing a lot for verifiable credentials is like, how do you prove that somebody is who they say they are? Or like, how do you prove that someone is like a verified user? So like LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram all have these different like verification processes and things like that to prove that someone's legit. So we're kind of seeing a lot of different applications, and people try to use verifiable credentials to like prove that someone's a verified user. So then they could actually prove that across a bunch of different platforms rather than like just on Twitter, right? Because if you verify yourself on Twitter, that doesn't mean anything to LinkedIn or Facebook or to a job searching platform or something like that. So whereas a verifiable credential, you could have it and you could prove it in different places. Um, so anyways, there's some kind of um, cosmetic like areas here where you can kind of name like the section of the credential. So you could have like the personal info here. And then again, we could just do like first name as a string, last name, and then we could do like a date of birth, which we can make a date. We could have like a country of residence, which is kind of needed. And then we could also create some like Boolean values, like over 21. So certain like age restricted products, for example, might only care about if you're like or over 18, and then over 21. And then even like if you think about something like a senior discount, there might be like an over 60 or something like that. And we can just make these true false, and then it'll kind of become clear like why that's interesting in a few minutes. So here's our very basic credential template
Yeah.
that we can create here. Any questions or anything so far?
For me, oh wait, there are questions on the side. I do want to like save those for after the demo because then there
Cool.
might go too long. But I do have one question for myself. It's like, so
Yep.
Trinsic, is it a wallet or is it just an area for you to create templated verifiable credentials and then other people can use those templates?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So we do have kind of a white label like wallet experience and like an issuer portal, but it also gives you the flexibility to like just define the credential and create the credential and then like send it elsewhere. So I think um, basically what we've tried to create is like a platform that's really easy to use and get started with, but then also if you want to get into it and customize things, you can totally like customize everything and do what you want with it. So I'll show at least what our kind of like white labeled stuff looks like, and then we can talk about how you would like customize that and do whatever you want, do something different.
Yeah,
So
go for it. I love that
um
it's like templated that way. Sorry, you can keep going. I just wanted to
yeah.
make the comment. I like that it's templated that way because then you don't have to be a developer and like be no JSON format and all that. And like it still shows you kind of like that view you showed us. It looked like a VS Code text editor. It still shows you that view.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's kind of like what we found is a lot of people are trying to like understand credentials, build a very simple demo, and if you can do that, like oftentimes people need to convince their boss that they should invest more time in building something. So building a simple demo quickly is like a can be a good tool to like be take to other people or take to hackathon even to kind of prove out a concept. So We'll see that like this verified ID credential doesn't have anybody who's an issuer of the credential. So we do want to like add a registered issuer, because if you think about certain credentials like a university diploma, you don't really want anybody to be able to issue a university diploma on behalf of a specific university. So there's kind of this concept of like, you want to have a registered issuer who's allowed to issue specific credentials. So again, there's different ways you can do this and host this, but for the sake of just like a simple kind of no code situation, I'm just going to add my own email as an issuer here. And all the credentials that I issue like from this email will be signed by the private key associated with my DID, my decentralized identifier. There's different, things you could do with your DID, but that's maybe beyond for right now. So if we go back to our credential template, and now I click issue, I'm going to be taken to a different place outside of the dashboard. So you can think about the dashboard as like the administrative, like back end kind of like tool. And then we have this white labeled wallet view that we call it. So I was actually before this doing like a demo of like a university diploma. So I've branded this as a university. We could go in and like change the branding and change the colors, but for now it just has the university diploma and these student ID credentials. So this is kind of the default view. Again, this is like a demo tool for the most part. Like people aren't really going to like bring this specifically to like a production use case. People will build their own, build their own wallet view, for example. But again, this is kind of simple demo. And to kind of show what this like issuance flow would look like is, if we go under actions and issue, we can create a credential offer. I'm allowed to issue all these credentials because I've been registered, but if you were, only registered to issue one of them, you would only see one of them here. So for the sake of this, we'll do kind of the verified ID. And
a quick question for you, go a bit far. I have a question related to your last step in chat. And basically says the DID that was shown, like showing that you're an authorized user to issue these VCs, was that created like when you send that email, or was it like fetching it from somewhere else?
Yeah, so that was created probably before, like a while ago, because my email already had this DID associated with it. So again, there's kind of some simplifications or abstractions within the platform that make it really easy to just like do something. So, but basically my identifier in this case is the email, and then there's like a one-time passcode to authenticate my email. You could also use other kind of factors. You could use like an SMS number. You could use kind of even like a custom like OIDC login, like a login with Google or a login with like some other like company account. But in this case, it's kind of, I have my email, our platform creates a DID associated with that email and kind of manages like how that DID interacts with the credential. Again, you could not use that. You could like export the DID and use something different, but the kind of the happy path or the easy path has that kind of abstracted away for you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So outside of your platform, like outside of Strinsic, do you think the templates or the structure for the VCs could be something that could be standardized, following reusability across different schools, whether they're on Strinsic or not?
Yeah, definitely. When you start to think about like how this stuff will, like credentials will become adopted, standardization of like templates and of other things become a really big sticking point. Because if everybody uses a different template and a different field name, then it's very hard to see how they can become interoperable. So I think we will see, and we do start to see like industry bodies who are standardizing templates for different types of information, but it's honestly very immature in my opinion, in terms of like, there is not a prevailing standard for almost any types of credentials at the moment, which is definitely going to like hinder adoption if that stays the way. But if you can imagine, it's really hard because you need to get everyone to agree
Yeah.
on what it is and to use it. Because if somebody says, wait, I need this other field, then you either say, well, you're going to build your own template that has a new field in it, or we're going to have a credential that has 150 fields in it and we're just going to use 10 of them, which is like more, I think there are certain like specifications that look like that, where it's like, what's the data? Like one field is what is the information? The next field is how was that information gathered? The next field is when was it gathered? The next field is how trustworthy is that information? So you start to end up with this credential template that has 100 fields in it because everyone who designed it needs to have the thing that they want in it. So it is definitely, it's a really good question, and it's a really important thing that is hard just because you need to get a lot of people to agree.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I haven't clicked on the XKCD comic that you put in the chat, but I think I know which one it is. Right? I think I know which one it is. So anyways, we'll just show the a little bit more of the flow here. So we work in like a credential is offered to the user. So again, this is like a no code demo. Obviously, if you're issuing like a verified ID for someone, you probably want to use some sort of authoritative data source, or like derive that from like a government ID document or like a digital identity that somebody has. And there are different like ways and solutions where you can like prove a digital ID, and that information like feeds into a credential, for example. Because you might not want like me saying that my date of birth is this, and if that's not trustworthy or anything like that. So and then we will check these, and
Nice.
we've now created the credential, but we've not like sent it anywhere right now. So
Mhm.
there's kind of two different paths. This is where some of the optionality in the platform goes, is that the Trinsic platform can be used to create the credential, and then you could just kind of save the result of that credential and like store it somewhere else, store it
Yeah.
wherever you want. Like you could save it to a user's end device, you could save it to your own storage, you could save it to a DWN potentially. But in this case, you can also just email it to someone or like email it. You could, send them a link or something like that. And that's kind of, again, for like a no code demo situation, whoops, we could just put in the,
I
my email
really like
here.
the options. I love the options because I mean, I'm still like, I think I'm still fairly new to verifiable credentials, and I was only imagining QR code, you scan it, but I didn't even think about like just send a link over or just an email. Makes it easy.
Yes. Yeah, you definitely can. Yeah, there's a lot of flows that are kind of QR code based. You can do a QR code here as well, like you saw before. But again, just for the sake of this, we just have the very simple like notification email that you've been offered a new credential. There's a little branding in it,
Yeah.
whatever. And then you can click the credential. You can see the information in it, and then accept it into your wallet here. And there we go. We have it. We have the credential. Yeah. Did you have
Nice.
were you going to say jump in, Ace?
Oh yeah, I was just commenting like that's insane because basically you're providing an issuing platform, but also like a wallet to go with it. Quick question just popped into my head. You did
Mhm.
mention you white label wallets. Is it something that is publicly available, like people could download and start to use to store VCs, or is it something that is specific to people that work directly with Trinsic?
Yeah, so this flow, kind of everything that you see here, you could like sign up in the dashboard, add your own branding, and create your own like view that looks like this with
Oh,
pretty much with no code and for free. Right now, the only thing that like is not is like your ecosystem name will be like a sandbox name. If you want like a custom name and some other things, you would have to upgrade. But basically, we wanted to so you could completely for free build like a really slick demo of like defining credential, issuing it, showing it in the wallet. Again, this is kind of using our like cloud wallet infrastructure. So if you we do have like a wallet application in the app store that has like a different kind of model of like edge security and storage, but right now it's not like an open issuance wallet. It's just for like
mhm.
kind of a specific like Trinsic use case. So there is a Trinsic app that looks like a Trinsic wallet kind of, but it's not necessarily something that like you could issue into
Yeah,
at the moment.
Interesting.
Um, yeah,
gotcha.
yeah,
I
yeah,
have an additional question, and then there are the two questions in the chat that I think are pretty
cool.
interesting. Um,
Yes.
My additional question, I know we had like initially talked about like KYC, know your customer. And I will be vulnerable
Hmm.
and say that I don't really understand the flow of like the know your customer stuff. So it's you don't have to like do a full out demo, but I'm like curious
Hmm.
how it looks if you are
Yeah.
like who's the one issuing the KYC? Is it a bank? And like what would the fields be? I don't even yeah. I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you were so we are kind of thinking of like a KYC credential and like I like to call it like a verified ID credential because KYC is very like I mean like know your customer is kind of specific to like a certain use case or industry, whereas like a verified ID credential could be used to prove your name, to prove your age, to prove that you're, have a valid ID document or something. So in the case of this, there'd probably be a lot more fields in here and of like other information that came from that kind of like know your customer check. Certain ways to go about it, like if you're onboarding to like a fintech application, for example, they need to know that like you have a government ID document that like passes their check. You need to also probably do like a liveness check and like a face match that like your face matches your document picture. There's also like list checks that happen. Like you can't be on a like a watch list or something like that. So some people will combine all of that into a singular credential and just say like watch list like true, like face match true, liveness check, whatever. Other people, you could imagine issuing like five different credentials where there's just a like watch present on watch list false is just like single field kind of credential. um so there's a few different ways to go about it. Again, back to standards, there doesn't seem to be any like standard or like well adopted way. But the flow of what this would look like is so we have the verified ID credential here. We can see the fields. If we go back to the dashboard, one of the other functionalities is the verification. And this is, again, just kind of a demo verification flow where you get to see what it would look like to actually like create a proof and verify the credential. So in this situation, you have a request, like a proof request for a credential that's like part of the schema, basically our verified ID schema. And then I get to disclose like what data I want to share. You could also, if you need certain data, you can also like make a template that requires that data to be disclosed. But again, for kind of demo purposes, I can say like, I don't actually want to disclose my name or my date of birth, but I want to disclose like my country of residence and the fact that I'm over 18. And I'm just going to select those fields. This is called selective disclosure, where you can choose parts of the credential to present without disclosing the whole thing, right? So if I now click verify, then we actually get to look at kind of what the verifiable like presentation, like what the proof itself looks like. And we can see that like it's this given schema. There's a like revocation, like here's how we determine if it's been revoked. And then we can see in the credential subject, maybe I forgot to uncheck that, remember, but we can see that it has just shared a few of the fields. It hasn't shared all of the fields. So you can imagine for like the actual like onboarding to the fintech application, you would get your credential, you'd go to verify yourself, you would only disclose like the required fields that are needed. This proof would happen, and then the application would just take the results of that proof and use that to kind of create your user profile, or like use that to know that you're actually like allowed to onboard to the application. So yeah.
That is amazing because it just kind of filled a gap for me right now. The first time I heard about selective disclosure, I was like, how do we enforce this? And I think that where I went wrong was I was thinking about selective disclosure from the angle of the person requesting the verifier, right? So I'm like,
Mhm.
if this person is saying they only want my name, or if I'm above 18 and they get access to my credential, how do I know they did not, check the other things, right? But like going through this flow
Mm.
kind of makes sense to me now, because it's like you've created your presentation definition, and you've said I need a VC that matches this, but I know what you're looking
Mhm.
for, because if now I can choose which of the fields in this same credential that will be disclosed to you, and it just kind of makes sense because now I am selectively disclosing this information to you. And I like before you showed
Mm.
us that, I had that like the other way around. And it's
Mhm.
just, yeah, just amazing to see.
Me
Cool.
too. Me too. I'm glad he did that demo because I was thinking, I was like, how am I going to make sure they don't check something else? But all right.
Yeah.
Mm.
All
Yeah,
right. So,
so one thing that's very like a little bit more technical, but the fact when you're doing this presentation, like actually creating this proof is you're not like ever actually sharing the credential itself. So kind of like the actual like signature in the credential itself is considered kind of like private. You like don't want to share it, at least in kind of the way that we are doing the proof. So what is actually presented here is like a proof of knowledge of the credential itself, so it's a derived proof from the credential. So they don't have access to the original credential. They don't have access to the original signature. They just have this proof, which was derived, cryptographically from the credential itself. So that's a little bit like more in the weeds, and like even that took me a while to understand. But like you're not sharing the credential, you're sharing this like part of it that was derived from it or something. So um anyways, so boom. Yeah. So there's a few other questions
yeah.
in the chat that we should probably get to.
Yeah, we should. We should. Sorry, we had so many questions. All right. We need to
No,
do
no worries.
first
No
question.
worries.
Vox Rocks was what are I mean, I don't know if you would know the answer, but what are the best wallets for
Mhm.
creating dips and seeing all VCs issued to them?
That's a good question. There's a bunch of different kind of wallet options. There's different like wallets that do like DIDs and VCs and like tokens and things like that. There are a number that can kind of do like one or the other thing. So in terms of the best ones, I don't know if there's necessarily like a best one. Like a lot of people have their own kind of flavor of a wallet that is like optimized for a specific use case. So there are like generalized like credential wallets, but I don't think many of them have a ton of like adoption yet. So I think that like the most adoption we're seeing people get in terms of like bringing products to market is building like a specialized wallet for the use case. So if you're doing a like a doctor credentialing thing, having your wallet application be a doctor's wallet, I think ends up being better for the user experience than having them download like a generic wallet that is just like kind of a blank slate, because having the doctor specific wallet like brings them through the user journey for the doctor, and it like speaks their language and like knows what credentials they need, rather than having like a generic wallet. So
Yeah.
um
If I can add to
yeah,
that, I
yeah,
mean, it's still it's a developing, ecosystem. Well, just based off
yeah.
your explanation, would you picture a time when then we would have to have like tons of wallets on our phones, for example, and we have to like
Yeah.
separate the credentials to different wallets, or it's just like, oh, I actually have my wallet and I can find what credential I want out of it.
We're probably gonna have a lot of wallets. Unfortunately. It just seems like that's what's gonna happen. Like, you know, yeah, because every individual like application needs to optimize for users onboarding into the application. The fastest way to get them to onboard is to make it really easy to get a credential in the wallet. The fastest way to do that is to like embed the wallet within that experience. So already in like web3 you see like these embedded user wallets where you just like authenticate with like a social account, and now you have a wallet in the back end, which
Yeah,
is great for your onboarding. Not so great because now all your tokens and or credentials are very distributed in all these different places. But for each like individual company trying to get traction, they want to optimize it. So basically, one of the things that we didn't get a chance to show, but people can check out, is like you can export your credentials from the Trinsic wallet. So again, we provide kind of a default path, like a white label wallet, a cloud storage, like easy to use, no code thing. You could also export your wallet and remove it and bring it somewhere else. Again, it's a very early space, so there aren't like an abundance of places where
yeah,
you can import your thing to, but you do have the choice of like, I'm gonna export it from here, and like somebody could go out and build the wallet where you could just
that
import
makes
your
sense.
credentials. So if hopefully in the future you might have a lot of wallets, but you should be able to kind of manage things your own, but I don't know. um, yeah, so interoperability with Web 5. I actually think somebody from the Diff hackathon recently like submitted a project that touched on this. So there was a let me see if I can find
Yeah,
it. Um let's see. Yeah, but on the dev post, there's there was a demo that somebody put
I think
together
I
in
saw
a
that.
recent hackathon. Yeah, that used like both like Trinsic and Web 5. So there is definitely like potential interoperability there, and like we're Trinsic's a big fan of like everything that TBD is doing. So we're like following the space very closely, and like our team was like super excited to see the kind of combination there. I think it was the door unlocking one, maybe, that kind of used both. So let me see if I can put this. I actually don't know if I can put it in the chat, but I can put it in this chat and
Yeah,
you guys
put it in
can
the private
share it.
chat. We'll paste it.
Yeah. And then I know, Vokrocks had another question about like the Trinsic ID apps. Yeah, we're kind of in the process of working through what the Trinsic ID app is doing. So right now we have a demo there, which is like a sample like identity verification. It does do a real identity verification, and the demo is essentially the fact that you do the identity verification with like a reputable IDV provider. That information gets turned into a credential. So it's similar to today, how we made like a verified ID credential. This is like an actual verified ID credential that's signed by and issued by like an identity verification company. And then the goal is that like once you have that credential that has these trusted fields in it, like a name or age or country, you could use that to like prove your name on a job marketplace or onboard. In this case, it's like a fictional like ride sharing application, basically. So that demo is live. There's not really anything there's not like a anything at the end of it necessarily, other than like you verify the ID, you get the credential, and then you can like do this proof. But again, that's kind of like a demo that we're working on and kind of showcasing that's related to like the verified ID like use case.
That makes sense. And they had one last comment, I guess, talking about how we
Yeah.
said there's going to be multiple wallets, maybe, and they're saying it seems like an
Mhm.
opportunity for simplification. I agree because I would prefer if it's all in one spot rather than me being like, which wallet again? Because that'll be overwhelming for me.
It's so there's
Yeah.
a really interesting problem that needs to be solved, like to make it work, because what we're learning is that like now that people have more like digital identities from like a European country or something that has a digital ID system, there's this trade-off between like the user needs to know that they have something in some place. So we can't like ping like some server and be like, hey, does this person have a digital ID? Because if we did that, it would be a major like privacy issue, right? If anybody could just say like, hey, is this person legit? Is this person been verified? So then what you need to do is you need to like redirect the user to their own like controlled wallet and like have them do it, because you can't do it on their behalf. So you have this like usability thing where it's like you need to know that you have the credential in a place, or else it's going to be hard to like get there. So anyways, that's one of the like difficult questions with like the user controlled wallets. And if you have 10 of them, like nobody can manage it for you, because it is kind of privacy preserving in that way, that like we don't want you to be able to know like, oh, your diploma's in that wallet, because then there's something so anyways, it's a really hard problem, but I completely agree that there's a need for simplification. So
Awesome.
Gotcha. We're running down on time. Rizel usually has a bunch of exciting questions to wrap up, so I'm just gonna tee that up.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, first of all, Zach, for this awesome demo and all the clarifications. Folks, if you want to try out Trinsic, I put the URL right on there, trinsic.id. But got some important questions for you. First of all, what's your favorite food?
Oh my gosh, I think favorite food right now is a warm chocolate chip cookie.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Went sweet. Yeah, I went
So
sweet.
wait, if I may, what would be your favorite snack? Because that sounds like a snack, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess that is like favorite like meal. I would probably say pizza. I'm gonna say pizza. Yeah.
Pizza, can't go wrong. Sauce, cheese.
Can't go wrong.
Pineapples.
Yeah,
Pineapple.
maybe not. Maybe not pineapple.
Okay, if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
You got to be able to fly, right? Like being able to fly it'd be too cool. Too cool to not do, that'd be awesome to be able to fly.
Yes. Ace, the other day you said something like putting everything in your brain or something like that. It was like yesterday. You were like, I wish I could like know.
I was saying I wish I could speak all the languages in the world.
Oh, that's what you said.
So that like regardless of where I was, whatever is going on, I can communicate. Like simple play.
All right. And last, especially because we're over time, sorry to take up your time. But last but not least question. This is the most important question. What's your favorite Beyonce song?
I think like Irreplaceable was just like such an iconic song. Like that was kind of like the right time for me growing up, that was just like such a big just have like, it brings me back to like a time of my like youth or something. That's like very nostalgic and good. Yeah.
Nostalgic song. I was like 9, but it was. All right. Any parting words from either of you?
No, as always, thanks everyone in chat. Thank you for stopping by, engaging Vox Rocks, Angie, Nobu, Ebony, hello. Also, thank you so much, Jack and Zach and Rizel. This has been exciting, very informative. Learned a ton. Can't wait to also actually try out, doing like creating deeds in in Web 5 and trying to reuse them on Trinsic and seeing how that goes. That sounds like fun. Yeah, thank you so much.
Definitely. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me. Again, if you have questions, you can find me, I think, on like LinkedIn, Twitter. There's a Slack which you could access through our website and things like that. So feel free to reach out to me any which way, and we'll be happy to kind of chat and help out. So thanks,
Yes.
everybody.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Just want to echo thank you again to the chat and to Zach and to Ace. And then also I want to let everyone know next Friday we're going to talk to a couple folks at Okta and see what they're doing with verifiable credentials as well. So tune in again at Friday at 12 p.m. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks all.